Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sah Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Okay, over to you, Krishna.
Yes. So apologize for a second. Like I'll just figure out how to do the screen sharing.
Bottom, there will be one green.
The more, right? Okay.
Is it more for you guys? Okay. No, it's without more itself. I think
Screen share. Okay, got it. So for our work, we always end up using
Teams,
the Google stuff. So
that's okay.
Screen.
Google is what? Meetings, right? Meet.
Google Meet and so on. So
okay. Hey, at the bottom row, you'll see something called share screen.
Yes, got it. Yeah, I think it should show up.
Yes,
we can see.
You see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Screen.
Hold on a second. You would think with like 3 years of COVID, we would have got this all pat down, but I'm still struggling. Anyway, Hari Om. So this is my short presentation. So given that I got a little bit more time, I put together my last week's notes as slides. So as well, start with a prayer. This is very appropriate here. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Hari Om. So for me, the big aha moment was that Manisha Panchakam, Bhagavad Gita, or Adi Shankaracharya's like the majestic one-liner Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahma Iva Naparaha. All of them are like kind of talking about the same question, answering the same question because it's the same issue and same problem with this samsara. How do we come out of it? We recognize the problem. The problem is avidya, and the only way you get rid of avidya is by jnanam. So it's the same kind of question and answers. But Adi Shankaracharya is think of that as like the answer to the 2-mark question. Manisha Panchakam is the answer to a 5-mark or 10-mark, and then Bhagavad Gita is the PhD thesis or 100-mark question in full. So the first observation I had like was a word with prota. So in first verse there is prota jagat sakshini, that which holds the entire jagat, and it's the one that's lighting up. And then Bhagavan Krishna says, "My sarvam idam protam sutre manikana iva." I am the thread that holds all the pearls and then makes this coherent thing called necklace. So I thought that was a very beautiful connection. And then across various lokash, we see the references to various jivatma, animals, humans, all the things. So either it be starting with Brahma all the way to the ant, or it's any drishya vastu or anything in the world, sarvam, and then vishvam, and then of course animals, humans, and devas are also included. So all these things are the jivatma equivalent, or the achetana tattvam also kind of included here, and how Bhagavan includes it to everything else. So in the Manisha Panchakam, we have the 3 Mahavakyams that we see. So in the first verse, Sa eva aham, he is me, I am he. And then in the second verse, it's Brahmaiva aham. The third one, it's not explicit. It just says Vacha Guroho, which we are supposed to take as kind of the Mahavakyam, because what does the Guru say? He says Tattvamasi to you. That's the main teaching. So you can take that as kind of your Mahavakyams. And then so I started connecting this to the various Mahavakyams in Bhagavad Gita. And like there is this famous shloka, Sarvo Upanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopala Nandanaha. All the Upanishads are the cows, and Krishna as the cowherd. He uses Arjuna as the calf and then milks and gives it to us. And so in chapter 2 itself, when we saw, we see Avinashi tu tad vidhi ena sarva mitam tatam. So there is this one connection where this indestructible Atma, Brahman, that is pervading everything else. Ori dehi nityamadodyaham dehe sarvasya bharata. The same thing is living in every single Jivarashi. So that was interesting from 4th second chapter. And then in fourth chapter, we have Atma Bhutani Ishvaro Apisan. So all the Atma and all the Jiva is Ishvaraha. And then 424 is this absolute majestic thing. At least in the earlier cases, you have transitive property. You have to say A equal to B, B equal to C, and infer A equal to C. Here Bhagavan goes straight away, A equal to B, A equal to C, A equal to D, and everything Brahmarpanam Brahmavihi. And then 435 again, Ena Bhutana Sheshena, Atman Yatho Mai. So everything is again me. So these were like all like this various small pieces where we have already seen the kind of Mahavakyams being expounded. And then of course in 7.4 and 7.5, again like this echoes very well the first three shlokas in Manisha Panchakam as well. Like in all the various Atmas, it's like become part of me. Or Prakriti Vidhi is also my Param form. And so there were two of them. And then coming to one of the main shlokas of Bhagavad Gita is this chapter 13. So Idam Shariram. And you will notice that like the Acharyas, wherever they use the word Idam, this, it means Jagat or Jivatma. And when they say Tat, it is the truth or Bhagavan or Brahman. It goes in that order. So they're here to, so there we had Idam Jagat Cha Sakalam in Manisha Panchakam. Here you have Idam Shariram Kaunteya is the Kshetra. Anything that is observed is the knower is called Kshetrajna. And then Bhagavan concludes it by saying emphatically, Kshetrajnam Chapi Mam Vidhi. I am that Kshetrajna in everything that's being observed. So it's not just the body alone, but every single thing. So that's like again a majestic Mahavakya conclusion. And then one more sample from the 9th chapter is Matstani Sarva Bhutani, and then it's just like almost opposes itself, saying Nacha Matstani Bhutani. The way we understand is I am in everything, but everything is not in me. I cause everything. And it's like a nice gradation of how Bhagavan builds up the teaching. The example like is given is something like there is architecture with this majestic big buildings and forms. From there you go to sculpture. From sculpture you go to paintings. Paintings you go to prose and poetry. And then from there you may go to music and then even math. So it gets more and more and more abstract, and you start taking away the forms and other structures that are needed to support. So Bhagavan created the world. Bhagavan becomes the world. Bhagavan appears as the world. It's kind of all this builds up through this. So to focus on two particular set of shlokas. So one is from the recent 6th chapter that we read, 29. Sarva bhutastam atmanam sarva bhutani cha atmani. So one who sees himself in all the living things and all the living things in themselves. So that's kind of equivalent of the Tvam Padartham from an individual's perspective. Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi pashyati. So one who sees God everywhere and God in everything, that's a Tat Padartham. From the 30th shloka. And then the 31, Sarva Bhutastatam Yomam Bhajet Ekatvam Astitaha. And then there is the Asi Padartham that nicely brings all the three together. So this three together put together kind of brings the Tvam Tat Asi Padartham, just exactly like the Bhagavad Gita's 18.666 as Tvam Tat and Asi Padartham itself. It's like a nice connection. And then I will conclude the Mahavakyams galore with the epic finale that Bhagavan himself finishes up, 1862 and 66. So in 1862, he says, Tamaiva Sharanam Gacha, go to him and surrender. And then his prasadam will save you. And then 1866, Sarva Dharman Parisya, Mamekam Sharanavaja, come to me and surrender. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami. So it's again like go there, go here. It is the same. So it's like again this Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi playing back and forth between these two shlokas. So with that, I want to focus on this one particular shloka. It comes up in the 9th chapter. It's almost like Vishnu Sahasranamam. There is this 3-4 shlokas that just expound God's greatness, machine gun sort of way, one verse after another, one word after another. So Gathir Bharta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasahas Sharanam Suhrit Prabhava Pralayasthanam Nidanam Bijam Avyayam. So if you look at each of these single words, Gati could mean the path as well as the goal. Bharta is the sustainer. Prabhu is the master. Sakshi the witness. Nivasaha is the abode. Sharanam the shelter. Suhrit is the friend. So if we take these words, this is from Professor VK's book, he says like these four are kind of the 4 Mahavakyams embedded from these 4 different viewpoints of the Brahman or the Lord. So if what is your path as well as the goal. We want to take the Tattvamasi and go there. And then when we go to the final abode, Nivasaha, we realize it as Aham Brahmasmi. And if you look at it as the Lord of everything, then you say Prajnanam Brahma. But if you look at everything as from the Sakshi point of view, say I am Atma Brahma. And then he also nicely connected the Bharta, Sharanam, and Suhrit as the transcendence, immanence, and the perfection principles of the Supreme, which we saw like Vishwam Vishnu from Vishnu Sahasranamam, as well as Kshetrajna Akshara Evacha from the talk that he gave us. One thing with the Suhrit, with the friend, was this very nice principle of, in this, the connection was how in our religion we kind of take Bhagavan as the one all-powerful who created everything, or we can take as one that exists in everything, as well as somebody who is very close and we can relate to and take with him along with us in the journey too, as well as to the goal. So of course, my pitch to Vishnu Sahasranamam, as always, just like in the 4 shlokas itself, either from Vishwam Vishnuhu or Bhutatma, Bhuta Bhavanaha, Gatihi, Avyaya Purusa Shakshi, Kshetrajna Akshara Evacha, Purusheshwaraha, Purushottama, Sarvaha, Stanu, Nidhihi, Bharta Prabhava. All these words are just like in the first 4 verses itself. And like in all the places where Bhagavan connects, so in the chapter 2, it could be Atma, Anatma, or in 7, Para Prakriti, Apara Prakriti, and then chapter 9, it goes to Prakriti and Purusha, or then it goes to 13, Kshetra and Kshetrajna, or in 14, Saguna or Nirguna, and then 15, he makes for the first time a 3-way split, Shara, Akshara, and Uttama Purusha. Like in all the things, Bhagavan keeps on saying the Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam, the Mahavakya teaching to us, and he's saying don't ever get confused that the Uttama Purusha or the Purushottama supposed to signify it's the Brahman appearing as everything else. So with the Mahavakyams over, the 5th verse is kind of saying this Mahavakya Brahmajnana Palam. And I wanted to just call out some of the shlokas in Bhagavad Gita that say the Sthita Prajna or a Parabhakta or a Gunatita. And then chapter 5, there is the Brahmi Sthiti, which actually is like both the regimen as well as the Palam. It's like each line kind of nicely going with each other. And of course, all banking on like the most epic line, Atmanyava Atmana Tushtaha, to start with. And then in 317, we see Atma Ratihi, Atma Triptaha, Santushtaha. And then in 524 is Antas Sukhaha, Antar Rama, Antar Jyotihi. So it's like a very nice way of how that also matches with the 5th verse of Manisha Panchakam. So, okay, so we know all the Mahavakyams, and Bhagavad Gita gives also the regimen along with the Mahavakyams and the teaching how to do that. So for me, the aha moment this week was just this last week. Heard this beautiful story by Swamiji. And the story goes thus. There are 2 friends or colleagues who meet, and then they realize they share the same commute path every day to work. On the way, there is this dilapidated house, and one friend starts complaining, saying, hey, this house belongs to me, my ancestors or my siblings, and nobody's taking care of it. It's very costly. And then every single day when they pass through the home, he comes up with like this whole list of complaints. He'll say, oh, government is taxing, contractors are not coming, the neighborhood is not clean, the roads are not being maintained. And he has all these complaints going on. The friend kind of initially gets a little bit upset, but then he must be a Sthita Prajna, so he kind of lets it pass and then listens. And he kind of looks forward every day, oh, what is the new creative complaint he's going to come up with. And then one fine Monday, when they are going to their work, the friend is happily just sitting and he's reading a newspaper or checking WhatsApp, whatever, and he misses the complaint part. And then the friend gets very surprised, and he couldn't hold his curiosity. And he says, hey, every single day you used to say something about this house. What happened today? No, I sold it. It's not mine anymore. And then so the point being, we laugh at that fellow, but I was thinking, oh, my world, my city, my job, my title, my project, my family, my wife, my son, my friends, my body, my mind, I am not learning. This body is not. And if Bhagavan were a cheeky millennial, he will be constantly eye rolling and like using air quotes with, oh, your body, you have a problem with your job. And then he will be saying, and it's not even not even that ours to begin with, right? So for me, the big realization is like, just like that guy, the moment he sold off the house, he kind of, the same dilapidated house, same government problems, contractor problems, neighborhood problems, nothing got fixed, but he just kind of gave up the ownership and he was able to stay free. So if we also kind of mentally do that, And actually, we don't even really give up. We just say, oh, I'm just the trustee here. Lord returned with thanks. I'm sorry. I assumed ownership of all this property, whether be it from your mind and body all the way to the world. But I'll just do my duty as a trustee here, and then I'll take care of it. Then probably it's like a good way perspective for us. And one thing I was also really saying is like whenever in all the various rituals, towards the end you do all the various dakshanai and danam and everything. After saying all those things, generally the priest will ask you to touch the plate and say idam na mama. So that kind of indicates this is not mine. So even though I think I am giving the danam, actually this is not mine to begin with. If the God created everything, I just kind of only temporarily held it, and I'm doing this act and playing this big part of this big drama. So I thought like, okay, so the tie it up with the story. If we say idam na mama to everything, that will be like a path to a good way to get these lessons much more when the world hits you very hard. So Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Om Tat Sat.
Wonderful, Krishna.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Awesome.
There's so much to learn.
Yeah, so much to learn. So beautifully presented.
Awesome, Krishna. You connect the dots beautifully.
Thank you. No, I went on a Mahavakyam hunting with Bhagavad Gita with this. I couldn't exhaust. You could see I got only to 7 or something, and then after that it got more deeper. And the 9 and 13, I just remembered those pieces because they are quoted so often. The Matstani Sarva Bhutani and then Kshetragyam Chapi Mamvidhi. But I'm sure there is like way more in those 10 chapters too. So we should do like a more detailed session. But I guess we'll do that when we do our Bhagavad Gita lessons.
Yeah.
Nice, nice, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll share the slides
yeah.
later.
Please,
on.
please, yeah.
Any questions
nice.
for Krishna?
Yeah, I just had one comment. The idam namama, that was the aha to me, like how you finished. I did not realize that. I mean, that we say that so many times, right?
Yep.
That was really cool. Okay, too. Thank you.
So do you pick this up, Krishna, like on the go, or you kind of did some research to pull this together? I mean, this is super impressive.
Oh, this one. Oh, from the various Swamiji's lectures. I mean, like as and when I've been hearing, I was noting down. So last week, I was almost ready to take my exam. Then my exam got postponed, which would have been my dream in my 12th standard and college. If only I had gotten it for my field theory or some exam, physics exam. But yeah, no. So I had weeks, so I put the presentation together. But I had all that.
I'm glad you did, because last time I think you were going to speak extempore almost, which was kind of
yes. I had that as notes and covered only 50%.
But here I think we are able to relate it a little bit better.
I know, yeah.
And also
exactly.
I think once you have the PPT, it's I'm very interested to read those Bhagavad Gita slokas again in terms of the commentary to understand how the links are. Yeah, a bit more.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey Krishna, liked it. One question, the world is in me. No, can you explain a little bit more on that gradation, right? You talked about the journey that, the deeper meaning of that. Other three ways you interpret. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Got it. Yeah. So Matstani Sarva Bhutani and Nacha Matstani Bhutani. So I think that's the part where Bhagavan says, I am in all the things. I activate and everything lives because of me. But if you say that small thing of Bhagavan is like this kind of soul, or if you kind of bring it anywhere near space, time, energy, object, or matter, then it kind of becomes a finite principle. So that's why you say, but I am not in everything. I am independent, but everything else is dependent on me. So the closest equivalent we have in the real world is light and space. So in Bhagavad Gita also, there is this one example. Everything exists in space, but space is not affected by anything. So that's like the closest way of how we put those things together. The other more concrete way is, for example, the fan. When the fan rotates and then we get the wind and everything, we say the fan operates, but it is the invisible electricity that is actually operating the fan. And we cannot see the electricity without the fan equipment. You need it. But the very fact that the fan operates is because of electricity. So something like that. Of course, in the case of both space and electricity, they also kind of become, in a way, perceptible and fall under the matter type of things. But here you have to kind of go one more step and then say, is a projection. Everything is a projection on top. And then the three ways of looking at it, the God created, that's like the various different ways of understanding. And to tie it to our last week, that is also Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita, and Advaita. When you say God created the world concretely as this supreme person who stands and does everything, that's the Dvaita philosophy. God becomes the world. Is the Vishishta Advaita, where there is one Narayana and we are all, every single thing, whether it's Chetana, Chetana Tattva, animals or humans, Devas, every single thing is a part of Narayana. That's its Vishishta Advaita. And then the Advaita's God appears as the world. So there is just only Brahman. There is no Dvaitam. There is no second thing at all. Everything is only a projection on top. So that's the third.
Okay, thank you.
Which chapter is this part in, Krishna? 7, is it?
Arthani Sarva Bhutani is 9th chapter, 4 and 5
Right.
shlokas.
One doubt I've always had is that when we most of us believe in Advaita, and when we go through, say, Bhagavad Gita, we understand in one way, and would it be the same way if a pure Dvaitian or a Vishishta Dvaitian go through it? They will also have the same understanding of how we understand how Bhagavad Gita itself, when they talk about Brahman and other things, will they also have the same understanding?
No, they will probably pick it up as the three different principles. But that's at least like the beauty of the system is between the Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and Bhagavad Gita. Whatever exists, you have to tie all these three things together and then make it one consistent explanation. So Shankaracharya sees everything as Advaita, everything is just like a projection. Whereas Ramanujacharya sees it as God becoming the world, everything becomes an Amsha of Narayana. And then Madhvacharya sees everything as two. So it's the exact same Bhagavad Gita, and this Kshetrajñam Chapi Mam Vidhi phrase is like one of the most contested phrases. Or Sarva Dharman Parityaja, what does Dharma there mean? And so on. So these Acharyas, having read all these things, they kind of give a very consistent explanation within their way of looking and interpreting those words and come up with the various philosophies. So yes, I mean, even within the Uttaramimamsha, the final 12th, the 12th darshanam that we all identify with, other than the Sankhya, Yoga, and other things, even within that we have like this, at least these three big triumvirate of philosophies, and then further there is like more fine tunings. But like we discussed that like in the last week elaborately. So the main thing is, so one, like each Acharya for their time and people and context, they come up with one particular way of connecting to the divine. It's like all roads lead to the same divine, but they see one particular path and say, oh, this is the interpretation. If you use this, you will go with the least troubles on the way. So that's one way of reconciling this for us as beginners. Or the other more practical thing is, like they all kind of are different ways to kind of get to the base camp, and then base camp to the peak is the same. We are all somewhere still like in our local city. So we are at 10, let's go to 90 to base camp, and then we can figure out the differences to do the final jumps, right? Like, so that's the another way of looking at it.
Yeah, that explains the commentaries by these, mainly these three sets of people. But what about, Vyasa or Bhagavan himself when he talked about it? So what did he mean by that?
But that is the part that these three are then trying to interpret, right? Like, so if we just read the Upanishads, we wouldn't get anything. So at least Vyasa came along and said, okay, I'll write Brahma Sutra and try to summarize, and I'll write this in a story form. And it's still like in a very multi-way, interpretable in multiple ways. And hence, like the later Acharyas like Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, then take all these three and say, oh no, I will tell you exactly what Vyasa meant or the Upanishads mean, and this is how they all form a coherent theory. So up to Vyasa, like we have only these works, and we kind of take the Upanishads as Apaurishaya, granted for true, and then Brahma Sutra and Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, we attribute it to Vyasa and say, okay, when there is a difference between or a seemingly conflict between the two, always go to the Shruti, go to the Upanishads. And that's why Adi Shankara in his commentaries, he says, a lot of people before me have written commentaries and they are all confusing. But I think I am going to write the authoritative commentary because I'm going to quote Shruti in every single thing. And in his commentary, he quotes a lot of Upanishads and Brahma Sutra, and mainly that's why we get the principal Upanishads, because those 10 Upanishads are quoted extensively in his Bhashyams. So that's the only way we understand.
Thank you.
Sakuba, your question was very interesting. So maybe, what I was thinking is like, if you become one of them, like Shankaracharya or Ramanujacharya or Madhvacharya, what would you interpret, So we don't know that, right? So your interpretation may be, the one that you really require. And that's what they did. And some of them followed whoever they wanted to follow. And others actually went and read all three of them and then came back to whatever they wanted to follow, right? So they may have switched from here and there. You may be the fourth one, I don't know.
So I started reading VK's book on Saundarya Lahari. Alpana, have you started reading it?
Not yet.
Not, okay. So he does cover a little bit in the initial chapter. About,
Initial chapter itself.
Yeah, he covers. So that's very, very interesting. I thought that was wonderful. Even though, so the premise or rather the Adi Shankaracharya was Advaitin, right? Out and out. Yeah, he said he was an Advaitin. However, Saundarya Lahari is about describing the Shakti, right, as a goddess and personification of the goddess and all of that, right? So how did an Advaitin do Saundarya Lahari, right? So Saundarya Lahari is like saying there are two things, right? There is the feminine power and the Shivam, right? So why did he do it, or how did he? How can he contradict his own philosophy of Advaita by composing the Saundarya Lahari? That is the this thing premise, and then they explain that it is to help people who are on the Bhakti Marga. Right? Saundarya Lahari was to help people who are on the Bhakti Marga. When you are steeped in Bhakti, then there is grace for you to realize the Jnana, that is this thing, right? So in order to help people who are on the Bhakti Marga, he would have done the Saundarya Lahari was the answer to that question.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Uday. I was talking to my mom about Professor VK, and she said the same thing. They come from a family where they were Shaivites, Advaitins, and they converted to Vishishta Advaita for a period of time, and then they converted back to Advaita. And Krishnamurti Mama had discussed that with my parents, I guess, and my mom remembers that.
Oh,
so it is interesting that when we ourselves need sometimes more Bhakti Marga, we may convert to that, and we can come back to Jnana Marga, right? So if we have an open mind, the moment we need whatever is, I think, important. Instead of dismissing anything, dismissing which is beyond us, like it's all beyond us.
yeah.
So at this stage, I think what works for you is better. And some of us maybe like come to a place where Jnana Marga is the best, right? So we will go with that, and there's nothing wrong. Or some of us may go back to Dvaita or Advaita, whatever, or Vishishta Advaita. But I think maybe that's why they have Saundarya Lahari as like 4 generations or 5 generations that they were praying.
But what I realized was in the Saktism, right, in the Shakti, this thing of philosophy, there is a very clear explanation of the start of the creation itself, right? How the Spandana happened in Shivam. Shivam otherwise is just existent. There's no feeling, there's no desire, nothing, right? How did the desire originate in Shivam, right? That was the Shakti. That's what they say. And there is I thought it was very fascinating the way they explained the whole origin of the universe itself in that text.
So just to add to that, actually, Advaita doesn't have any conflict with anybody else
Right.
because they have 3 levels of reality. So they say, okay, whatever you want to explain, even Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, you just come down to Vyavharik level and you can explain it. So it's explainable. So that's why actually being an Advaita, you can actually write commentary on any of the other darshanas. Other darshanas have a problem with Advaita.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Great.
one of
Very well
to
said.
add to what Alpana said, I heard in one of the commentaries that sometimes when we are not able to understand Advaita, it's very difficult to understand. At that time, and sometimes people don't understand Vishishta Advaita, right? At that time, they would need Dvaita. Like for atheists, they would need Dvaita, they would need Vishishta Advaita. And sometimes even if you go to Advaita, there are conflicting times when you come back to one of them. So I think it was, whose commentary was that? Ravi Shankar, I think Sri Ravi Shankar's commentary. So it was very interesting when somebody was arguing like which is better, which is not better. And he gave a very simple explanation that this is how we toggle between each one of them. And there's no better, but this is how it is. It's like how you understand Advaita, then you can go back. But if you don't understand Advaita at all, then it's very difficult to say which one is good. So you have to see it in a different way. It's very difficult to say which one came first or which one came last. But I think it's for us to interpret and make sure that we are grounded. I think most important is how we are grounded in that conviction. And that's what I think the Manisha Panchakam says, like you're grounded in that conviction of these 5 things, like all the 5 shlokas. So I really like that way to, come back to the Manisha Panchakam of how it is grounding ourselves and making us think in a way that, it's all the 4 Mahavakyas and all the 5 questions that were answered by Shankaracharya. It was beautiful.
So I had a question. Sorry, Alpana, I had a question, which is in Advaita, we say that, it's ignorance and you remove the ignorance and you realize yourself, which you always were, right? So that sounds nice, elegant, sort of scientific way of thinking about it, or logical way of thinking about it, at least. But in Dvaita, where you've got the concept of the Purusha and the Prakriti, what is moksha in Dvaita is what I'm kind of wondering.
Merging with God.
So is it the merging of the Purusha with the, Prakriti with the Purusha?
No. So Prakriti and Purusha are different. So actually that's Sankhya. Sankhya says Prakriti and Purusha are 2 different things. Whereas
Right.
Dvaita says Jeev and Ishwar are different.
I am different from God. And the highest point is I go to the feet of God. Sorry. Yeah.
And so the Jiva merges into Ishvara. Is that what it says?
Correct.
I see. That is the concept of moksha.
Yeah, because see, you have to remember Dvait, Vishishta Dvait and Advait, Dvait, Advait, and there's another one. There are 5, 6 actually of them.
Veda.
They are all part of Vedanta, Uttar Mimamsa. Whereas Purush and Prakriti as 2 things is
Sankhya.
more of Yoga and Sankhya, both.
And so, my question therefore was different, which is that in Sankhya, what is moksha?
In Sankhya also, they say there are multiple Atmas, but one Atma will go and merge with Paramatma. The Prakriti will continue because Prakriti is independent reality. But see, whether it's real or unreal, even for Dvaita, Advaita or Vishishta Advaita, even if the Prakriti continues, it has no impact on Atma, right? Because Atma is beyond all of them in everybody's viewpoint, whether it's Sankhya or Yoga Shastra, even outside of Uttar Mimamsa. Even for them, okay, for them, Prakriti will continue as a separate reality. In Advaita, Prakriti continues as appearance.
Mm.
But it still continues, right? So it's minor difference, right? Once you've reached as the Paramatma level, whether you consider कि ये movie चल रही है और movie भी नहीं चल रही है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है? इसलिए मोक्ष
Right.
में पहुंच के कोई फर्क नहीं रहता. That's why
Yeah. No, I
that's
get
why the
it. Yeah.
end goal is same. Yeah.
Yeah.
One more thing I was saying was Sri Ramakrishna used to always say, there are many paths to it. You can take any path, but take a path and focus on that.
Yeah.
Because if you keep moving between different ones, you'll get more confused. But what we are doing is not, we are not taking multiple paths. We are just trying to understand how these are saying. So that's fine.
Exactly, yeah.
But even when Sri Ramakrishna said, take one path, any path. There's no better way or worse way of doing it. But just take a path and stick to it for some time to understand it fully.
In fact, he lived his life as a, as a Muslim for some time, and he was a devout Muslim.
Correct.
He lived his life as a Christian. He lived his life as a Hindu, and he said that even if you're a Hindu Muslim, whatever you are, but be true to that particular
And you
faith,
will reach
right?
the same reality. So
Exactly,
he did it
exactly.
as a
Same reality.
Christian, as a Mohammedan, he
Muslim,
reached
yeah,
the same
correct.
thing. And then see, he was a big Dvaita, right? Ma is everything. Ma only taught him. But then Totapuri came and he had the experience of Advaita. बोलता है, सब एक ही है, सब एक ही जगह ले जाएंगे. So it doesn't matter which way you go. That's why he said it very convincingly. Take any path, but choose a path. I think we should continue with our this thing. Who wants to go next? Guns, you want to go?
I can go. Like between last week and this discussion, I think mine are no longer ahas. But yeah, I can go for sure. Yeah. Let me share my screen. And I will try to go into slide mode. I should share screen. Okay.
Share your screen first, Gunts, then you can go to slide mode.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, like I said, not major ahas, but definitely, I mean, for me, this is going to sound a little bit different from what K2 did, because there are so many. He is a genius in doing the interconnections, and it's a very hard act to follow, but follow I must, as Alpana said. So let me do this quickly. So when I say aha, then I felt like this is too much. Too much meaning figuratively. This is really very cool. So and we talked about this last time also, which is there are no extrapolation of, there should not be, or there is no extrapolation of the teachings from Manisha Panchakam or any of the teachings for that matter. They are allowing to have caste issues. Because there are just classifications, and Dr. VK also says this in the Science and Spirituality book, and I'm sure he refers to this in other, even in the Spek Krishna and all that, those are classifications, and he gets actually into the mathematics of how these classifications are, and there are 4 of them, and then there's different ways of classifying the entire society and all that. So that was a big aha for me. By the way, I need to tell you all this. This was the real aha. Okay. This morning I called Dr. VK, And because Krishnan, or Kitta as we call him, last week he got the book because I did not want the book to be mailed to Dr. VK. He wrote the foreword and everything. So I asked Kitta, hey, can you just take it to him? And I want him to personally see somebody, and the book needs to be there because I'm not there. So he did that, and he sent a photo. So then I had I pinged VK earlier, and I asked him, hey, can I please call you? I want to say just hello, because now you have the book. He said, call me anytime on Sunday. So 5 minutes before our call, I called him, and he said, so I said, this is Rajesh from Atlanta. And immediately he said, I got the book. He sounded like a like a kid who got a new piece of chocolate or something. It was like so beautiful the way he said it. And then I said, Vidya, you're going to like this. I told him, I immediately got into Tamil because I know, he's very fluent, and he probably doesn't get to talk Tamil that frequently, right? So I switched to Tamil, and he was telling me, I asked him, so how is it going? He said, and suddenly he said, my wife passed away several years ago. And then he fell silent. I said, oh, I did not even know what to say. And then he said, so then I asked him, so now you have a lot of time to meditate. And he said, yes, that's what I do all the time. In fact, even now I was doing that. Then I felt like, oh my God, did I disturb you? He said, no. By the way, somebody is at the door. I will talk to you later. I could hear the bell in the background. So he said, that is fine. We will see you later. And we ended the call. So anyway, my aha was I definitely called him while he was in the middle of his meditation, and but it was just awesome to do that. Anyway, so coming back here, I was going to ask him about this, about Manisha Panchakam. Actually, I thought that I will get some new insight and bring it, but ran out of time. The other thing that I saw, and we talked about this last time, there is no extrapolation of the teachings across genders also. No caste, no gender, none of that. Because I'm just listening to Brihadaranyaka lectures by Swami Ji, and there you can see there is a major debate between Yajnavalkya, the sage, and his wife, Maitreyi. And Maitreyi asks a lot of questions. And in fact, the first question she asked, which is in all of our minds, is, if I get everything in the world, in fact, if I own the world itself, what would happen? Am I going to be happy, and am I going to reach the happy state? And he says no. And then they go back and forth, and he asks the question. Then there is another story in the same scripture. There is another sage, and I did not know about her at all. Her name is Gargi, and she comes and challenges Yajnavalkya 2 times to test his knowledge, because she is a major scholar. So it is just so obviously established that there is absolutely, the scriptures are like way ahead in their thinking, and there's no differentiation of gender or anything like that. This is just I extrapolated myself from Manisha Panchakam into this piece because I just happened to be listening to this. The second aha was, if you want to get a summary of the entire Vedanta teachings, you can get it from Manisha Panchakam, and of course, Guntax gave us that swamiji.com. So I got it in the next slide. A beautiful table of all of them, and then what the English translation. And I think Adi Shankara also reconciled this, and he was connecting all of these things. When I was listening to some of these lectures, Swami Ji, this is Swami Ji's lectures, but I'm sure everybody talks about this. And we were just talking about this, right? The silence of Advaita, to be able to absorb all the different schools of thought, is able to do that. But there is, and then apparently Buddha, when asked a question, he was quiet. And then there is one school of thought in Buddhism about shunyata, or the nothingness, and so forth. So there might be some of these divergences occurring, but like what you were saying, Alpana, the final stage would be the convergence of everything is going towards the same thing. So that that's just a comment, and this is kind of I became very curious about the last verse actually, and it was because I'm listening to this Brahdaranyaka also at the same time. The question of the bliss and the ocean of bliss keeps coming up again and again. I was very curious about that. So we talked about this, the Yoga Sutras talking about removal of suffering, which will also be very similar with the bliss. And my aha is, I think they are all probably the same. And Krishna also refers to this in the second chapter of the Gita. To me, it was very clear that all the schools of thought, whether it's Advaita or Vishishtadvaita, Advaita, any of that, they're all talking about the same thing. And what was the screens are moving around for me. So let me move this away so I can read my sentence. Yeah, it is like everything, everywhere, all at once, right? We have the Oscars coming up tonight, so I was just listening to that. It's that's kind of several ways in several places, and Krishna too. I think you were talking about that. Everything is in me, and I am in everything, kind of description, and the experience of this quote unquote bliss. And then the last one is, I think the message is that everybody and anybody should know this and should be able to practice and learn about it and do it. Because there are various different types of people there. There's Shankara, then his disciples, then there's Chandala. It really doesn't matter what part of society or what the way you live or anything. And I just put a question to myself: is this the drama that Mukku was talking about last week? He's saying this whole thing is a staged drama to convey some messages like this. That is kind of what I had. And here I just reproduced this because I wanted to do this for myself, but I thought I'll show you all this anyway. Okay, so here you can see all the Mahavakyas, and Guntak sent us the link for this, and if you click on them, it will take you to those links. So Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya is Brahman is real, the world is unreal. So this is obviously the Advaita point of view. But like we were talking, there at some point there is a merger of all of these schools of thought. Brahman is one without a second, supreme knowledge. Tattvamasi is the guru telling the Shishya. And I find these things very beautifully connected because they're all taking from all the different scriptures and then bringing it all into one. Aham Brahmasmi, and the last one, I have not seen that before. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. I'm not sure. Some of you might know where that is from. But that's the first time I saw that all of this is Brahman. So I think there are various ways of interpreting it, but essentially the concept is the same. with that, the last one, again, I went back to the bliss question because the last verse, the ocean of bliss, right? This is one aha that I got just yesterday when listening to a lecture. So the bliss is, it signifies the infinitude or the unendingness concept. And it's not something that you physically experience. This is what I learned yesterday. But we do experience the knowledge of what that could be or that is. And that itself is a mega feeling, apparently. Obviously, I don't know the feeling, but that's what I heard, and it was a very interesting thing to me because I kept going back to the ocean of bliss. I remember, Subbu, you were talking about it in one of our earlier discussions. I'm not able to adequately describe this here, but that ocean of bliss is like you already become that. So there is no way when you are that you are going to experience it. Then it separates you from that. So that was kind of an aha, but I still don't know how to explain that very, very well. So that's basically what I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Guns.
Very nice.
Excellent.
Very nice, Guns. Beautifully connected.
Yeah, I really like this last slide with all the 7. It's beautifully written.
The 7th
Yeah,
one is
this is,
new, but it's very interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's completely from
Brahma.
yeah, that one I have not seen that before. I don't know where it is from. It's very interesting. All of them, obviously, they capture the essence, and of course, this is directly from the website. So
It's from Chandogya Upanishad, I believe.
Chandogya, okay.
Yeah.
Even number 2, Guns, Ekam Evadvityam Brahma. That's also something I've never heard before. Very nice.
Ekam Advitiyam Brahma, yeah.
Yeah, that's a new one for me.
Yeah.
Actually, here I just want to add. So in this list, there are still only 4 Mahavakyas. Mahavakya is one where you say that Atma and Brahma are same. That's the rest of all of them are very important Vakya, but not Mahavakya. So
Yeah, I think it's 3, 4, 5, and 6, right?
correct. Those are the.
Yeah.
There are many other Mahavakyas, but they have to say the unity between Brahman and Atman. So only then it is classified as Mahavakya. But all the other 3 are very powerful statements as well. Yes.
Guns, you mentioned, right, ocean of bliss and that which is not physically experienced. Okay, I think you should listen to Taratmananda Swamiji on this lecture. So he actually talks about this, saying that if Brahman is Satchit Ananda, right? Satchit and Ananda. He says Ananda is something that you experience, right? So something that is experienced, how can it be Brahman, right? So he questions
that. That is exactly the debate.
He questions that. In fact, I'm coming to that. So then he goes on saying that if something is experienced, it cannot be Atma. Therefore, then he says basically the issue is the issue of communicating certain things in language in the best possible form. Okay, so he says the better word for that would have been anityam. Okay, anantyam. Okay, that's what he uses the word, which actually means limitless, absence of boundary, etc., and therefore qualifies as a subject. And then he says Ananda is not experiential bliss, but it is incomprehensible Ananda, that is, which is limitless. Okay, so when you look at it from that perspective, then you can understand ocean of bliss. Then you can also say that Ananda is not something that is experienced, but what we're referring to is not experiential bliss, but incomprehensible Ananda. So that's the answer he has given. Yeah, maybe I can forward the link. If you want to listen to him, I think he would be better equipped to explain this again, in a better fashion. But it is there in his lecture.
Sure, please do. We'll post it in our group.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. See, the thing is, for me, right, this is me personally, the consciousness concept, it's discussed to no end, right? There's cognitive science, neuroscience, all this. I mean, we talk about is he conscious, am I conscious, and that it keeps on going. And Alpana, I think you had a beautiful description of existence in our in the mothership group, in the Pilani group. So I start that message because I'm going to go back and save it. The existence concept, that is also kind of, to me, it is, let's say, it is more understandable. But the concept of this bliss, right? It's just, for me, it is just a very, very, I think these descriptions do not do justice. So the lectures from the Swamijis, they seem to kind of take us closer. You know.
Yeah, that's something which I also experienced, which is, I mean, when you read, you get a large part of what you read, of course. But there is nothing that replaces listening to the guru say it in his words or her words. I mean, it's a completely different experience. So as much as I hear about different books and this, that, and the other, my preference always has been to just plug in my, my earphones and listen to whoever, is giving something that interests me. So yeah, it's something which I've realized there's no substitute for a guru's direct upadesha.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I remembered one more thing. I know that Guntax asked Dr. VK this question, and I was going to ask him that, because the last time Guntax was talking to him, he asked a question, are you Advaita, Vishishta Advaita, Advaita? Which school of thought are you with? And he said, I am with all of them. And then he showed him like the vibhuti, the three stripes, and he also had the namam like this. So that was a very beautiful response, I thought, going back to our other discussion.
Amazing. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you, Guns.
Thank you. I will stop share. Yeah.
Ajay, you want to go next?
That's me?
Yep.
Okay. So I'm just kind of a bit challenged. So I just kind of click on share content. Is that what I need to do?
Share screen.
Okay. I don't have share screen on.
Do you see any more with 3 dots? If
Yeah.
you click on that,
you
should be able to see share screen there.
You do share screen, then you select the screen you want to share.
I don't seem to have share screen on it somehow. But there's something called share content. Oh, that's more of transferring. Okay, sorry. I just kind of wonder how that works.
Or do you want to drop
He's
it
on an iPad? Anybody?
Or you want to
with an
send
iPad?
it to me? I can share it then. If you want.
It's on an iPad. So is that possible? I should be possible. I'm just kind of
send the file to Alpana or drop it in our group.
So Ajay, on the bottom, right between participants and chat, like where you click the participants or click on the chat, there's a green color one called share screen. That's what I see.
But are you using iPad, Krishna?
No.
It's
laptop.
on Mac. Yeah, on
Mac.
laptop it's like that. But let me see the.
Let me other way to send this to you.
Yeah, even on iPad, you can see the green share content.
It's just share content, but is that the one?
Yes.
Okay, does it work?
I hope so.
Try.
Try.
Okay. Okay, screen. Okay, got it. Start broadcast. 3, 2, 1, go.
Yep.
Yep.
Great. Now, how do I see my screen? I'm just a bit.
Go back to that whatever you wanted to share.
Okay, and I just go
slideshow mode
from start. Can you see it now?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, excellent. Okay, awesome. This works.
Oh, very nice.
I'm learning. Thank you. Okay, so I think I don't have the depth that K2 had, or the easy conversational style that Gunz has, but I've got a few slides, makes it easier for me to communicate what I want to say. Just wanted to acknowledge, I've drawn very heavily from Swami P, Swami SPG, and Swami Aparajitanandaji's lectures. So everything that is in here is their wisdom, and all the fallacies are obviously mine. Great text. I think very succinct, very deep in terms of its message. And so looking at the word Manisha, which we all know is a firm conviction. But I think what was also clear to me is that to get that firm conviction, or to get that jnanam, or to become a jnananishta, you need both the sattva guna, which is really the absence of your deha abhimana, which comes, I think, from the practice of sadhana chatushtayam, which kind of prepares you for receiving the jnanam. So I think both being sattva and getting the jnana is important to be able to have that firm conviction in Brahman. So I think that to me was an important sort of takeaway. I think the other thing was that this, and I think as some of the others have highlighted, it's a great text to symbolize the equality amongst the jivas. And this was obviously written at a time when casteism was quite rampant in India. And so very relevant for that time and today, around the equality amongst the beings. So I think that's an important message for me. Just a quote that I read somewhere, that this text helps us swap our prejudices and egos with love, acceptance, and respect for everyone. So, and again, an important message, especially in the world that we live in, where there is so much ego and hate and everything else. So in that context, it's a very relevant text. And there's a very nice 25-minute lecture by Swami Taratmananda, and he actually titles this as Manisha Panchakam being a spiritual cure for hate, racism, and casteism. And I thought that was very apt. So I just kind of put that down for my notes. If I move on to the next slide, which is around the Mahavakyas, and I know, Alpana, you just mentioned it, but to me, this was aha, which is that, what is a Mahavakya? I mean, we've heard this, endlessly, but really, a Mahavakya is something that that connects the Jivatma and the Paramatma as one. I didn't realize it until I read it in the Manisha Panchakam explanations. What you see on the table is not new. If you noticed, I have done a little bit of a rearrangement, and this is entirely my sort of thought process. Welcome any thoughts, but in terms of the shlokas, I have changed the order to 1, 3, 4, 2. And the reason for that is that I have tried to put this into the framework of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. And the first Mahavakya, which is Prajnanam Brahma, as it's called, the Lakshana Vakya, which is essentially, from a theoretical point of view, to say this is where we need to go as a student at the time we start the Shravanam. And there are obviously a variety of texts around Avasthatrayam or Panchakosha Vivek or Dirigdrisha Vivek. And so in a way, this is kind of your starting point. Having sort of explained the Laksha, then the Guru gives the Upadesha, which is Tattvamasi, to say that thou art. And the Manisha Panchakam has several kind of pointers around explaining Tattvamasi, whether it is burning the vasanas or doing the 6-fold qualifications to achieve a Shanta Atma, It does talk a little bit about how the karmas are exhausted when you become a Jivan Mukta. But that is kind of the teaching, which is the Upadesha. The third one is for the, you now get into the Mananam phase, where the student is contemplating what the Guru has said in Tattvamasi and contemplating around I am Atma Brahma. And I think from this is an ongoing process. Some of the analogies that have been included in the fourth verse around a quiet lake, or being analogous to a quiet mind, and the phrase used is Prashanta Kalane. Again, I think that's part of the contemplation bit, and I moved the second verse down to the last to say this is the experiential Vakya, or the Anubhava Vakya, where you say I am Brahman, which is when you get to a point where you are beyond the gunas. You recognize that you are Sachidananda or a Sthita Prajna, and to a point where you are, there is a firm conviction that the Jagat is only a figment of Brahman's imagination, playing on the English phrase that something is a figment of your imagination. So I've changed it a little bit for my own understanding. It may or may not sort of work for everyone, but that's how I thought about it. I think the other Mahavakya, which I kind of quite like, is what's at the bottom, which is also part, I think, of the 7 that you put up, which is I am Satyam Jagat Mithya. It's actually Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, but I'm assuming Brahman is I. And it's not just important to own up who you are, but equally to disown what you are not. So to me, that was another sort of Mahavakya, which I quite like, and therefore I included that in the list here. I think the aha moment, which is like aha moment every time I kind of contemplate on it, is around that I'm not the knower of Brahman, I am Brahman. And I can't remember which shloka, but Brahma Eva Brahma Ved was really an aha for me, because as much as we read, as much as we contemplate, the fact that I am Brahman and not just a knower of Brahman. The mind is a knower of Brahman, and there is obviously nuance around that. But the real I is Brahman, and there is no sort of second way to look at it. So to me, that certainly was an important Mahavakya. Important aha moment. So that takes me to this sort of final slide, which is having kind of thought about this, and again, I'm in this contemplative mode, and I'm thinking to myself that you can do the I am not this kind of approach, and at the end of the day, you kind of ask yourself and say, look, but I don't feel that I'm Brahman, right? And sorry. But you kind of say, we all know this Panchakosha sort of framework. And I asked myself a question as to how does these Panchakoshas actually reveal Brahman, at least from a Vyavharik sort of standpoint, right? And as you go from left to right, this is close to subtle, of course. And so I tried to analyze each of these five koshas. I think the Annamaya is something which is straightforward, because without the knowledge, that is the Pratyaksh part of you. And so it's easy to mistake that as the real I. And again, as you kind of reflect through Shravana and Mananam, it's probably also the easiest to understand that I'm not the body. So I think that's probably the because it's gross, it's easier to understand, right? If you move to the right, the Pranamaya, which is essentially the vital energy that drives us, primarily sort of reflected in the fact that we feel thirsty and hungry. And there are enough and more sort of experiences, and I emphasize the word experiences, that controlling our breath would quieten our mind. And so it has this ability or the tendency to create this trap, if you will, where you think this is it. I mean, I can control my breath and I get a unique experience, and this is the be all end all kind of thing. And that kind of sort of keeps you in the small I sort of framework from a prana point of view. And I'm sure we've all heard stories about how rishis have lived thousands of years, kind of gives you this false sense of immortality, if you will. And that sort of, at certain level, kind of keeps you in the mind space or the framework that, you know, the prana is the I, right? And that this can go on forever, right? So to me, that was an interesting sort of thought. Moving to the right on the manomaya, again, that's really sort of what drives our likes and dislikes and rag-dveshas and the desires. And I think the challenge for that is something which at least we all recognize, that they are creating the vasanas which are self-perpetuating, and we're trying to get out of that cycle, that fight between the intellect and the mind goes on. So, and I think that's something where you've got this whole issue of impurity of the mind, which creates this, and that's an ongoing sort of endeavor to get over it, right? The fourth one is around the Vijnanamaya, which is the intellect, and which kind of makes you curious about the material world, and that sort of, that curiosity sort of traps you in this vritti about the material world and prevents us from going down the path of self-inquiry, right? And, you know, again, if you think about it from a scientific perspective, and I know there's a lot of debate that goes on in the mothership, you know, even an uncertainty principle is seen as something which people are seriously curious about. I mean, that's, you know, if you take a step back and say, you know, why is uncertainty such an important thing when we can focus on the self, which is the most definitive reality. So it's an interesting sort of diversion between sort of looking inwards versus looking outwards. And then, you know, the intellect is sharp and it knows what it does, but because, you know, the mind has so much raga dvesha, even if the intellect says that, you know, this is the right thing to do, the mind is stronger, and that sort of takes over. So it kind of creates this cycle where you're unable to get out of that loop. I think the fifth one is interesting, which is around the Anandamaya Kosha, where even, you know, the minute happiness about the world, the Vishaya, is often mistaken as being the ultimate eternal bliss. And this whole sort of cycle of Kriya, Moda, and Pramoda kind of tricks us into believing that happiness is a property of Anatma. And so we keep seeking this happiness, pretty much like a dog chewing a dry bone, and getting this, what's called the Pratibimba Ananda, not realizing that, you know, that is not what one seeks. And that in some ways also then prevents us from renouncing our likes and dislikes, and keeps us in this kind of, in this samsara and cycle of life and death, until, of course, we find the guru who kind of brings us back on the path of self-inquiry and takes us to the other end. So I think, you know, to me, this was useful just for my own benefit to understand why are we struggling with not being able to kind of go away from the ahamkara, which is the idam vritti, which is a thought, to a brahmakara vritti, which is also in the mind, because that's how you connect it back there. But at the end of the day, you know, the gap between ahamkara and brahmakara vritti is still pretty large. Certainly for me, it is very, very big still, at least in practice. And nididhyasana is obviously that tool to be able to reduce that gap until they start to come together and merge up. I think 2.5, which is phalam, again, it's about sort of reducing the desires in the mind, removing the individuality, removing the ego, and going from the vyashti kind of merging into the samashti. So I think that the phalam, I think, is, at least again theoretically for me, it makes all good sense. It's the kind of inability to go beyond the Panchakosha, which I think I certainly need to work on, and that's the near-term challenge. Yeah, I mean, essentially, sort of, we're kind of going from being bogis to yogis, but again, yogi is also not good enough, which is where we are kind of right now. The ultimate goal we recognize is to become the Swarupananda, which is the Brahman. And I think in that sort of context, you keep sort of doing what Krishna has told us, do karma yoga, go from Nishkama yoga from Sakama yoga to Nishkama yoga, do Upasana, go from Eka Rupa to Aneka Rupa to Arupa Brahman. Keep repeating it, do Abhyasa, increase your Vairagyam, become Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna, and that's your path to Jnana. So it's all sort of rolled into that final sentence, but yeah, those were my sort of reflections. I'll just finish with the last slide. I think the slide, the of the 6, shlokas in Nirvana Shatakam, I think the last one is what sort of really captures my imagination. And when I recite the first 5, I'm like going, not this, not this, not this, not that, and then you kind of say, Aham nirvikalpo nirakara rupa. This is me. Vipur vyapta sarvatra sarvendriyanam. Sadame samatvam namukti namantha. Chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. So to me, that is kind of the essence of Manisha Panchakam in a different sort of text, of course. And then some of you would have read this. I happened to read the Song of the Sannyasin, which is written by Vivekananda. And he's got several sort of paragraphs, if you will, but the one which I thought related the most with Manisha Panchakam was around what's on the right, which is, there is but one, the free, the knower self, without a name, without a form or stain. In him is Maya dreaming all their dreams. The witness, he appears as nature, soul. Know thou art that, Sannyasin bold, say Om Tat Sat Om. I thought that captures the essence of Manisha Panchakam really well. So I'll just put it down there. But on a separate note, I would really urge everyone to read the full Song of the Sannyasin. It's beautiful. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Ajay.
Very
Beautiful,
nice.
Ajay. Nice.
How do I stop showing this now?
I can stop if you want.
Okay, there we go. All right, thanks.
Just one question. I mean, just a clarification. I mean, in your third slide, you had mentioned Anandamaya Kosa as related to worldly bliss. Is that right?
So I think the way I understood it, and that was
Okay.
the first time I've read it that way, Subbu, is that you're right. I think Anandamaya Kosha is actually beyond sort of
This is the Jagat
all the
Sakshini
other.
is what I thought,
But no, Jagat Sakshini is, I think, anyway, Brahman, right? Because that's the witness consciousness, right? So that is, to me, a step beyond Anandamaya Kosha. But the way I understood it is
Kosha
that
is also a sheath, Subbu.
it's also a sheath. It's not. It's still part of the small eye.
Okay. Is
right?
it not the bliss itself? I mean, what is referred to as the, no, okay.
Yeah, and the way I understood it, reading some of the texts that I was kind of referring to as I tried to understand this, is that the Anandamaya Kosha is really the Kosha which really fools you that happiness is the property of Anatma, right? And that it is what kind of keeps you in that cycle of happiness and then sadness and back to happiness. So I'm not sure whether that's entirely the right explanation, but it certainly resonated with me, because I'm thinking to myself, why are we it's not rocket science. Why is it that we feel like little happiness is something we run after? And what I understood sort of listening to Swami Aparajitananda was that that's the sheath which actually fools us into thinking that every little happiness is the ultimate bliss. And that keeps us in that cycle of the Panchakoshas.
Okay.
Hey, Ajay, that was so beautiful, and several of us are commenting here. The connection with the Nirvana Shatakam was beautiful. I was also going to add in that koshas, the Anandamaya, to Subbu's question. I think this again, if my memory is right, the Anandamaya is also associated with the deep sleep state. When you are in deep sleep, that's the kind of the sheath that you experience, because there's no the physicality is gone, right?
Right.
And it kind of merges with the Anandmaya. It is the Anandmaya, is the understanding, and it is also all of the causal body. You know, the three
Correct.
bodies.
Yeah.
Physical,
Gross, subtle, and causal.
subtle, and
This is the
yeah.
causal body. Yeah, correct. Yeah.
It is also the causal body, part of the three bodies.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah.
Sure. Hey, Ajay, I had another question on when you're saying sannyasin, right? Lot of times, like we talk about, you know, Adi Shankara was a sannyasi, and they take a certain specific steps. So this question keeps coming up, right? Like Janaka was a king, but he was still enlightened. He was an enlightened soul. So I just wanted to see what is in your mind when you are talking about the sannyasa. Obviously, you are very attached to it, or you like that last quote that you presented. So, what is your interpretation, or what is your take on the sannyasin?
So my take on sannyasin, the way I translate it, at least for my sort of understanding, is sannyasin is a seeker. It could be in grahastha, it could be as a sannyasi, it could be in any sort of stage of your life. A seeker is a sannyasi.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think that's how I simply think about it.
Yeah. In fact, you know, you reminded me of this. Somewhere I heard that like you can be in different stages, and you can be still called a sannyasin or sannyasi.
Exactly. And I mean, I think Swami SPG says it very nicely. He said, or Swami P was it? He says you can become you declare yourself as a sannyasi, but you can't go back to grahastha. But when you're a grahastha, you can still be a sannyasi, right?
Okay.
So the way I think about it is that, yeah, I mean, sannyasi is simply put a seeker at any stage of their evolution or their life.
Okay. Yeah, that's really, that gives very good clarity. Thank you.
Do we have time for, can we extend for 5-6 minutes, because only I'm left to go, so should I?
Yeah, I think you should do that.
Yes, certainly,
Yes.
Alpana.
Go for it. Yeah.
Go for it.
So sorry if there are more questions for Ajay. I think after I'm done, maybe, you know, if there's a combined question, we can take it up. So I'll just start with the prayer. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyom Vadvyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. So, interestingly, Manisha Panchakam was the first text I listened to Swami SPG. So, after that first lecture of Who Am I that he gave at IIT Kanpur, which Rajan Dubey had shared. So, after that, I was just looking up, and Chitra actually she recorded Manisha Panchakam and sent to me, and she said it's a great text. And so I was looking up, you know, some lectures on it, and then Swami SPG's lectures, the one that I shared. So that's why it's very close to my heart, because, and I think I had a lot of aha moments at that time. But when I was reading it again, so I couldn't really pinpoint any aha moment. So my two aha moments are actually from the contemplation that I did on Manisha Panchakam. So, and that's the reason I wanted to go in the reverse order, that my aha moments are not really from Manisha Panchakam itself. So I wanted people to cover it, and I'm glad, Ajay covered it really in detail. So just wanted to go through, while I was contemplating on it, what were the two ones. So there were two aha moments in that. The first one was, I was thinking of the examples, how we think of this Jagat as mithya. So one is the wave and the water. But the wave can really see that it is made up of water, but we can't see that we are made up of Brahman. I mean, I'm just taking the analogy very, very physically. So it's easier for the wave to say, I am water, and be enlightened. But for us to think of it, so then the second example I think I keep going back to is the rope and the snake example. But there again, we have the ignorance, and the ignorance can go away that this is not a snake, and we stop seeing it as the snake and we look at it as the rope. So even there, it was not kind of, is it that simple that even Ajay was pointing to that? Is it that simple that, just think that it is ignorance? And we've heard it, we've read it, there have been multiple rounds of different texts saying the same thing, that, this whole thing is mithya. And once you know it, then it should go away, but it doesn't. So I was thinking over this example only slightly deeper. So there's a lot of imagination involved, so I didn't put it on the slide. So imagine there are three ropes. So there's a small rope, there's a big rope, and there's an ordinary rope. Now you imagine that these are not three ropes, but three snakes. So you are the God who's created those three snakes. Now think of a jiva as those snakes. So you are just imagining it, but they're not the snake. So you are never in the doubt. You don't have any doubt about it, right? Now, as you can keep telling within your imagination to the snake, you're not the snake, it's only me imagining it. But look at it from the snake perspective. You'll say, yaar, tum to bahar baithe ho, but I can't see it. I'm a snake in this imagination, right? And that's what probably our situation is. And then the snake will say, as a snake, oh, this snake is bigger than me. And, all kind of emotions can go through within the snake. Now, for the snake to know it is a rope, he has to lose the identity of the snake. Only then the rope will just remain, right? So the two snakes who are fighting, the big one and the small one, they can keep fighting in the imagination and they will never come out of it. They can keep thinking, no, we are not snake, we are not snake, we are the rope. But as long as they're snake, they cannot come out of it. So that ordinary snake, so now that God, which is outside, which is us, keep telling that you're not the snake, but that doesn't work because we belong to different realities. First of all, that snake cannot even hear us because it belongs to a lower level of reality. We are reality as compared to our imagination. So you need this ordinary snake is actually a guru who has realized that he's actually not the snake, but the rope. Now the advantage is it is also an imagined snake. So they are in the same level of reality. The ordinary snake, which is the guru, and the other two snakes. So when that snake tells the other snake that, hello, you look at me, I am also looking like a snake, but I'm not really the snake and I have experienced it. So that's the importance of a guru, that only a guru, because see, how much ever, like Krishna has written entire Gita and we still don't get it because it is coming from a higher level of reality to us and we don't get it. But if we hear it from a guru who is at the same reality as us, it is slightly easier to think about it. And we can be convinced in some way that, okay, if the guru is saying we have to lose this identity and then we'll become the rope. So I thought that was that's sort of made sense from, how it may be happening. Okay, so that was the first one. Then I was thinking, okay, so how do we think about resolving or dissolving this identity, what we are? So you can imagine again one of the two scenarios. Either you are at the brink of the black hole, or you are at the brink of pralay. Black hole being read about it a little bit, I think it's slightly easier to picturize. So you are at the brink of the black hole. So you can even think of whole earth as being on the brink, right? So first the floods will come and will cover it. So the entire earth will, as you've read even in how the pralay happens, it gets covered with water. So the Prithvi element actually merges with water because everything becomes fluid, and the water actually apparently covers it. And even the Noah's Ark and the Matsya Avatar, so it's the same concept. There are huge amount of floods. So the whole earth, you can think of it, there's no more earth left element. Everything is in the liquid form. And then they say that the 12 suns come out. So, this is happening at the brink of the black hole. So the entire water, when it comes in that pressure or heat that is generated, which is the Agni Tattva, the water evaporates and converts into maybe the Vayu element or the gaseous state, and the entire earth melts, and then it becomes more like a ball of iron because of the heat. So it has whole of it has converted into Agni. And then what happens? That everything is stretched. So everything gets converted into Vayu. And then all the atoms begin to break, when it goes into the black hole. So everything gets converted into energy. So then only the space is left, right? And then when it gets sucked into the black hole, the singularity comes in. That's where there is no space also left, right? So, but I will still be there. That I think. Then what is left is me without space. And now that in that singularity, there are no attributes. So if there are no attributes, then nothing else can change. If there's no space even left. See, till now, the earth was changing into water, was changing into fire, was changing into then air, and then space. But now even the space is gone. So there's nothing that can change. What is time? Time is actually change of something, right? We say time is Earth's rotation 24 hours. So there is some change which is happening. But now if none of the attributes are left, there'll be no time as well. And when nothing is left, but you will still be there. And if you can imagine that state, that is what will be an infinite potential state, right? Because it has gone from all possibilities into that. It still has all possibilities within. So that's why it becomes that infinite thing. And hence, because there's nothing else, everything is within you. Because that black hole you can imagine that it has sucked everything. So whatever is there is in you. You can't ask for anything. There wouldn't be any dukh. So absence of dukh is the ocean of bliss that we talk about, and then just the bliss remains. You wouldn't have any instruments to experience it, but it'll be just bliss left. So I thought, those two were the thoughts that I came up with during my contemplation.
So beautifully connected, Alpana. Very nice. I like the 3-rope example. The guru being in the same reality. That hit very close to home. Ajay, you're muted.
Sorry, what I was saying, Alpana, it's a great sort of thought process. Loved it. In the snake example, I mean, isn't the, I mean, you've taken an example of 3 snakes, but it could be infinite snakes, right? So isn't Guru also one of the snakes?
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It's an ordinary snake, and that's why I said it's the most ordinary one which is left, because it doesn't care about. That's how a guru
Right.
will look. They'll be very ordinary people looking like us. They don't look any
Yeah. So exactly.
fancy.
Yeah. No, that's a great insight. I mean, great way to think about it. That we just feel like Guru is also like one of us, and so
And that's why
why
we
would
listen
we
to.
have?
We will listen
Yeah.
to him or her. Yeah. Correct.
So what I meant
That
was
was the
slightly different, because,
punchline
like,
for that. Yeah.
even if we listen to the Guru, at a certain level, we're still saying that the Guru is also one of us. So that conviction takes
As
time
the,
to
as
develop.
the snake.
Yeah.
Correct. As the snake, he's one, but he's saying that I'm not the snake. So maybe kuch ho sakta hai shayad.
So is the third bigger rope supposed to be the God, or or the
No,
Ishvara in Saguna form?
no. So two snakes were because they were fighting and comparing with each other, and then the third ordinary snake is just lying there, which is the Guru. You are the
Got it.
God who's imagining the 3 snakes in
Got
those
it.
3 ropes. Yeah.
Excellent.
I like how the last point you mentioned also connected to the Saundarya Lahari, where like Shivam is just consciousness and auspiciousness by itself, but it needs the Shakti to realize in anything. So the way you ended with the black hole example of singularity being just bliss, nothing else, not even there anything to experience the bliss, just the bliss. So it's so beautiful.
Yeah, Alpana, this is like pure innovation at various levels, like extending it to 3 ropes, then ending with the singularity. It was just awesome, really awesome.
In fact, yesterday I was reading something about Maya, in a book, and what you were saying actually resonated, well with what I read yesterday, because he says for the normal person, for an ordinary man who doesn't look into the karana drishti, I mean, he's just seeing the effect and he's not really reasoning the cause. Whatever happens in the world is real. Okay, for him, everything in the world is real. For him, he will not accept the concept of Jagat as mithya, right? And the seer who is like experienced, the status of Brahman, for him, Jagat, this entire Adi Shankara statement is valid, Brahma is Satvayam, Jagat Mithya, and Jivo Brahma. He says the people in between, are the ones who have a maximum problem, because they're neither here nor there. They're in between. Okay. And for them, how is it that something which is seen apparently as real is unreal at the same time? Okay, so this is the confusion that a student of self-inquiry happens till you get to this state or that state, right? So when you're in between, you have this confusion. And then he says that one more thing that he says is that it is like the example he gives to clarify. He says that, when you look at a mirror, right? Is the mirror a real reflection of you? Okay. It is unreal, but it is a real reflection of you. So it is real and unreal at the same time for the seeker. So that's what I just thought I'll share with you.
Nice.
Awesome.
So another one.
Sorry,
go ahead, Muko.
No, I just loved it, and I think the point that you're making about just from this to the singularity, right? It's almost like going to nothing. I think some of the deeper scriptures say that happens in every breath. That's the mind-boggling part, right? The breathing in and breathing out is that cycle. Every breath, that journey happens. So you come from the world into that point of nothingness, and then you come back. So that's how they articulate time, space, everything. In fact, from Brahman to that Maya causation happens in that breathing cycle. So it's pretty incredible, how the rishis have discovered what the rishis have discovered. So many thousands of years back. It's just wonderful, yeah. They're just it's mind-boggling that the whole well thought through and articulated. Thank you.
Yeah, the soul.
They say that Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying the Soham and Hamsaha, the two philosophies that we have, they're exactly what Mukku was saying. A lot of it is explored in Kundalini Yoga as well. And yes, the breath itself is just the whole cycle of creation, dissolution, and preservation. Yes.
In fact, Guru Paramarthananda in his lecture says that the, Veda is something that is given, right? And it has been handed over to the man because human being is incapable of cognition. Okay, so therefore the Vedas are given by the rishis, etc., through the cosmic transmission, etc. Because individually, if an individual was to think about it, the human mind is incapable, the instrument is incapable of this understanding and cognition. That's why it is given for smaranam, mananam and nididhasanam. It is a knowledge which is given. Yeah. Not created by human intellect. Yeah.
All right. We'll close it. Om
Thank you.
Satoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
7 chapter, 5 verses next time.
7 chapter, 2 verses.
2 verses.
2 verses.
Only. Why 2 verses?
We do 1 or 2.
So we're on chapter
Because-
7 next week.
And chapter 7, definitely first 2 verses. Let's just do 2 verses.
Yeah.
The Jnana and
Look at
Vijnana.
Subbu.
Being
Yeah.
over enthusiastic. The
Sorry,
first
sorry, Anupama.
bencher. Front bencher, over enthusiastic. Sure, give us more homework.
Just one. I'm good.
No, I went through that a little bit, but I thought, okay, if there is something so much to be discussed, then I'm missing something. So I will keep it that way.
Yeah, Subbu, prepare the slide for 5. Keep it up for 4 weeks.
Then
We'll
you'll
use
have
it for 4
nothing to
weeks.
do for a long time.